You recently said, as a young lawyer, trial tech has been the single greatest asset you've had to consistently win against much older adversaries.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this.
Sure.
You led me right to it.
Sure.
What cutting edge tech, do you use? Like, what's some of your like, hey, this has been really instrumental. Let's talk about it.
Sure. So at the core, what I use in really any presentation that I do, it could be a trial. It can be, I used it yesterday at a mediation. It could be at a deposition. What I use is a dedicated laptop, which I only use for that. So I don't really use it for surfing the web or messing around or stuff. So it's really just, for my trial stuff. And I use a software, it's called Exhibit View, which I came across about 10 years ago. There's the funniest video on somewhere on YouTube of me talking about it. I actually was invited to come speak to the Atlanta Trial Lawyers Association, where I was like 3 or 4 years out. I had no business going down there, but I just love this stuff so much. And it at that point, I think it was my first $1 million verdict that I got using it. So I use this software, which is basically enables you to pull up any piece of evidence in your entire file. Okay. Like that. I mean, basically 2 clicks and it's up. You can also do a ton of stuff with it. You can compare and contrast different pieces of evidence. You can highlight, you can circle. There's a lot of different things that you can do really on the fly. It's very intuitive. That alone, that ability to have your entire caseload there and not have to spend any money on anything. One of the big reasons why I got into this was because I was having so much trouble. One, with hiring trial technicians, because it was very expensive for my small practice. I would use these big cardboard blow-ups, and then they would get damaged or dirty or, shitted up. One time I had a trial, I was lugging in about 20 different blow-ups that I had spent, I don't know, $2,000 on from Staples, and I got caught in the rain and it ruined all of them. Okay. And I was like cursing this. I was like, and then I had to, go nuts and drive to Staples and freak out and reprint it. And it was a whole thing. I was spending so much money and time using this stuff, where with trial technology, you don't have to spend a dime on anything to blow up every piece of evidence that you have, photos, videos, all of your documents. It's up like that. And I think, these days, younger attorneys are already tech savvy. You use computers for the most part. We use cloud systems for case management, whether it's Dropbox or, the other case management, softwares that we use, and everything is really digital. I mean, that's the move now, to have a virtual, everything accessible virtually. So you have everything already scanned in, you have all of your evidence. It's just a matter of finding a way to use it. And this software it's incredible. The only catch with it is that it's not usable with Mac, and it's only for PCs. So the other thing that I found is that you can use this software virtually as well. All you need is an extended screen. So basically, the software projects whatever you want to put up. There's a little projector button. So you set it up, project it, then you can interact with it. But for the most part, people have an extended monitor or just a second monitor. I mean, these days you could go on Amazon and get them for, $50, but you can set that up for mediations as well, so that you can rebut, different, points that your adversary is making. You can present your whole case. I think that there's a lot of value in some instances with using things like PowerPoint, which I know a lot of attorneys talk about. But the big problem with that is that you have to follow along in sync. Okay. And if something comes up that's you're prepared, or that's not in the order that you set it up, you're totally screwed. And I think, when I first started out, I tried doing that too, and it was just a mess. With this, if anything comes up, you have a 1,500-page medical record, you can just pull up any page, a doctor's talking about, and boom, is that what happened? Was that your history? What was your exam on this day? It really gives them nowhere to hide. And I think what people, need to at least try it out to see that it actually simplifies the process of putting on a case, cross-examining a witness, because you have everything so easily and organized right there. All you need is really a good outline, and you're good to go. Instead of having a million, stacks of paper and shuffling through. I mean, it could be a disaster, especially for guys that are doing it on their own, which is something that I take a lot of pride in, that I've always done my trials and workup all on my own. So
that's amazing. And,
yeah.
One of the things that comes to mind, and I think for many individuals, like no one wants to go on jury duty, right? So these individuals don't want to be there. They're not getting paid well. And so the time perspective is like, you're trying to win the know, like, trust, right? Or the trust and the likability perspective to the jury. And it just seems like if you're moving through and you're organized and,
totally,
it doesn't seem like you're wasting their time, that they'll like you more.
Right. It cuts out all the BS, right? It gets right to the point. And so the way that I got into this is I told you I was trying cases for maybe 3 years. I had some good results, but I wasn't getting like over the top verdicts on some cases that really I think that my clients deserved a little bit more. And I felt that I put on a great case, but it just wasn't getting there. And when I talked to jurors, they were telling me that, your presentation really wasn't, as good as, the way that we could see that you felt about the case and wanted to show us. And it was just kind of lacking. So I went to a CLE with the New York State trial lawyers, and I'll never forget this. There was an amazing attorney. His name is Martin Edelman. He still practices in New York. He's one of the top New York City trial lawyers. And he was talking about demonstrative evidence, and it was like he was looking right at me. And I told this story before, but he asked a question. He was like, what do all jurors love? What do all jurors love? And everyone around the room, they say, oh, they love their family. They love chocolate. They love, vacation. He's like, no, all jurors love television. Okay. Everyone loves TV, and we all do. I mean, what's TV now? It's these things.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone loves TV because it's engaging, it's stimulating. We don't want to just hear things. We don't listen to the radio, I mean, we do, obviously, if this is a podcast, but, for the most part, people are watching and listening and want that immediate, gratification and engagement. Okay. And that was kind of what clicked with me. And that's when I kind of ventured off to try different software. There's other things like Trial Director or Trial Pad, which you use on a an iPad. There's some others like Sanction. I don't know if that one's around anymore, but it just so happened that Exhibit View was the easiest to use for a solo guy, where I didn't really need help. It's very intuitive. It's so easy to learn. You can learn it in 30 minutes.
Nice.
So I think that is the engagement element. You got to engage these jurors. They expect it. They're expecting an Amber Heard trial.
Right. And so what I've wondered is, like, you hit on the mediums, right? You got the visual, the television component, right? You can see the different angles, things like that. I mean, do you complement it? Again, I'm not an attorney, right? And I haven't seen many trials. Are you wheeling in the skeleton structure where they can kind of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, if you look, I have like some of my toys up there. I love, whenever I'm getting ready for a trial, I get as much stuff. I just had a trial where it was a improperly installed shower door, and it was one of these really thick glass doors that was improperly installed and shattered on this young. She was 21 years old. Closed the door, it shattered all over. It looked like a murder scene, and she had lacerations all over. But what I did was I went online and I bought a 1 foot piece of that glass to just pass around to the jury, and so that they could feel how heavy that thing was. And if you could imagine an entire wall of that, shattering, all over you, that kind of makes it tangible too. Another thing that I'll do is one case that stands out. It was one of my biggest verdicts right before COVID. It was an extended hospital stay where a surgeon, my client, developed a really significant infection. And this surgeon he was admitted to the hospital for 6 weeks. Okay. This surgeon did not see him for 5 of those weeks. Okay. Despite all these other people. And he was in the hospital the entire time. Okay. So what I did was I blew up basically 2 calendars that I could write on. Okay. So I went week by week. You were here on this whole week, right? Let's X out all these days that you didn't see him. Let's go the next week, because you tell someone 30 days or, a month, it might not register. But when you show them on a calendar how many days that is, how many weekends where my client was in the hospital, in the worst pain and all this horrific stuff going on, you didn't walk down the hall and see him, that something like that puts it over the top too. So I think you should always be, looking for additional ways to make your points. I love, these days you can get amazing 3D renderings of CT imaging and MRIs. I always try to do that if it's, a really bad, I have one coming up with a really bad skull fracture. The 3D MRI is like, oh my, it's unbelievable. Stuff like that, which is fairly reasonable these days. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. I was talking to my buddy at this company, Fox AE. He sent me, I'm actually going to do a little video on it. He sent me, they made a 3D where jurors could actually put on a 3D set of goggles and be inside, like for one of them, it was a trip and fall where if you were walking through this area, you wouldn't have seen like where the caution sign was, just to get someone's perspective on that. And then it was like, there was a bicycle accident, there was a car accident, and all these recreations, which, I mean, could you imagine if you brought in VR sets for your entire jury? Right. I mean, it would be amazing. So all those things, just keep adding them up. I mean, do as much as you can. The client is obviously the most important thing. And if you're putting your client and your case in the best position to really make an impact, you're going to do well, I think.
That's incredible. So are you, is it one of these things you're cruising just the regular store and you're like, oh, I could use that for my trial? Have you had those types of scenarios?
Yeah. So the other day, I have this it's kind of like a GoPro. It's called the Insta360. I'm actually going to put out, it'll be a little while before this comes out, but on my Instagram, I did a little thing about it. But I use this thing for fun stuff. It's really cool. It's a really cool device, but it's basically a GoPro with two lenses on one on either side. So when you use it, it simultaneously records everything around you. And then once you record the video, you can go into the app and literally take your phone and like look around the entire, where you were in that video. Okay. So it dawned on me, I was doing an inspection. Okay. And in this case, it was a really bad ankle fracture where my client was a construction guy and went into this hardware store. Okay. And when you would go into the hardware store, he tripped and fell in a staircase in the middle of the store. Okay. So when you would go into the store, the staircase was only visible from the first aisle when you would walk in. Okay. And what ended up happening at the time of the accident was they improperly stacked up all these product boxes right in that aisle to a level. It was 60 inches that we figured out through measuring, the boxes that were there. And we stacked them up during the inspection to see what it would look like if I walked in with this, what my perspective would be. Okay. Because basically what happened was he walked in, didn't see the staircase, continued to walk to the back of the store, did some shopping. He had never been there, and then came back up to the front where this whole staircase was basically walled off by like product shelves. So you, again, couldn't see it. And he basically turned the corner, took one step. He was looking at like products on the shelf and went down those stairs bad. Okay. And when you looked at the surveillance video, it was almost kind of laughable to, it's terrible to say, but, when we first got the case and put it in suit, the defense firm was like, you don't have a case, there's nothing. But when we did it, with the 360 camera, it was absolutely incredible. They were actually asking, where could we get this thing? Like their own expert loved it so much. And because you were able to hold it and walk in and actually see what someone's perspective would be. And it really proved the case. I mean, maybe there's some comparative on my guy, but it definitely got us over from like a summary judgment motion, and it was really, really powerful. I think it really made the case. And these little things, we live in an age, there's so much great tech out there to play with, sky's the limit. what you could think of with this stuff. Like I was thinking today, like using that same thing. So I told you I do a lot of medical malpractice work, but just to feel what it's like to walk into like a hospital, walk into like a surgical floor where patients are, what that feeling is. And you could do that with this and just kind of walk in and look around and see what's going on, something like that puts a juror or an audience in that, perspective, because a lot of times people will have a difficult time, gaining that perspective, just kind of trying to imagine it, because people aren't, don't do this stuff every day. So they can't, think of it on their own sometimes. So,
yeah. And I like all of the mediums and examples you've used, even the shower, like holding it, the weight you can actually feel.
That was
opposed to someone telling, it's just incredible. And it's so out of the box too, because when you just don't expect that you're going to see a presentation like this.
Yeah.
So it's like engaging and draws your attention to it too. And it makes it memorable because it is different.
Absolutely. I'll tell you another story. So using this trial tech, another problem that I had with showing MRIs or like x-rays is that I would have my expert and he'd be like showing a laptop, okay, to like showing like a little laptop screen to the jury and trying to pick out like these little things. Or back in the day, you'd have like the film printout of like, the actual imaging. He'd be trying to print. It was like a joke. And you could blow it up, but you couldn't interact with it. So it was really clunky, at least to me. I mean, I'm sure some other guys have different tactics for this, but I tried it all and I was having a terrible time. So one of my first really big, it was an orthopedic malpractice case where it was an osteochondral fracture of the knee. Okay. And this doctor didn't take out a piece of what he thought was cartilage, but it was actually cartilage and bone. Okay. And we showed it on the projector, and it was just a little piece of bone that if you were just a layperson, you wouldn't see it. And during deliberations, what did the jury ask? They asked for Mr. Newman, put up the MRI again. So I raced over, got it all set, made it super bright so that they could see it. And that won the case. Wow. Just alone having that, if I didn't have it, I would have lost. So.
That's incredible. That's incredible. No, that's exactly, I'm a visual learner too. If I'm trying to, and just there's different inflections and how you present things, but that works its magic. But when you get to see it or feel it, it also just adds to it. So totally. I think that's incredible.
You want to engage the senses as much as possible. That's that for your little kid. There's this children's book that I have a 5-year-old that I read to him, that it's all about your senses. And that's how people learn. You don't know how people learn. You want to engage as many of those things as possible to make an impact on them. And this is just a way to do it. Well said. Well said.